The rumors began quietly, like whispers carried on the wind. At first, they were small, playful questions in fan forums, speculative headlines tucked between red carpet photos. But as the years went on, those whispers grew louder, turning into a storm that followed Sam Heughan everywhere he went. Is he hiding something? Why doesn't he ever talk about his relationships? Maybe he's not who we think he is. The questions were relentless, and no matter what he said, or didn't say, they never seemed to fade. For an actor whose entire life had been built on bringing truth to fictional characters, it was strange to realize that his own truth had become a mystery to the public. The world had fallen in love with Jamie Fraser, the passionate Scottish hero of Outlander. People blurred the line between the man and the character, assuming that Sam's real life should look exactly like the fantasy on screen. When it didn't, they began filling in the blanks themselves. The first wave of speculation came during the early seasons of Outlander, when fans noticed the chemistry between Sam and his co-star. Interviews, behind-the-scenes clips, even the way they looked at each other on red carpets became fuel for endless theories. The internet dissected every smile, every glance, every moment. Some fans swore they saw signs, others demanded explanations. And through it all, Sam stayed silent, polite, gracious, but distant. That silence was both a shield and a curse. On one hand, it protected his privacy, on the other, it invited even more questions. He's too private, they said. No one can be that secretive unless they're hiding something. The irony, of course, was that what he was hiding wasn't some scandalous secret, it was exhaustion. The pressure to constantly defend himself, to explain his every friendship, every gesture, every photograph, had become unbearable. Friends who knew him best could see the toll it took. Sam, the man who laughed easily and worked harder than anyone on set, began to retreat into himself. He avoided public events that once energized him. His social media posts became carefully curated, stripped of anything personal. Behind closed doors, he admitted to feeling trapped between who he was and who the world insisted he should be. "They want an answer," he told a close friend. "But whatever I say, it'll never be enough." The tabloids didn't help. Some headlines were cruel, others simply careless. Reporters asked invasive questions disguised as curiosity. A simple, "no comment," would be twisted into confirmation. It was a game he could never win, and after a while, he stopped playing altogether. He poured his energy into his work, using acting as a kind of therapy, a place where he could express emotions he wasn't allowed to show in real life. Yet even as he tried to ignore it, the conversation around his private life refused to die. On social media, fans debated endlessly, creating narratives that suited their imaginations. Some defended him fiercely, others analyzed his every move as if decoding a mystery. What no one seemed to realize was how deeply this all affected him. For years, he had carried the unspoken burden of being misunderstood. The world saw strength, but behind that strength was fatigue, the kind that comes from constantly proving you don't owe anyone an explanation. Then came a turning point, a quiet interview that few expected to become so revealing. When asked about the ongoing rumors, Sam didn't deflect or joke as he usually did. Instead, he paused, looked down for a moment, and said softly, "People will always have their stories about you. I've learned to let them. Because the more I tried to correct them, the less they saw me as human." That single line shifted everything. It wasn't a confession, it was a revelation. It told fans more about him than any rumor ever could. That he was tired of being defined by speculation, tired of living under a microscope, tired of being a headline instead of a person. It wasn't about sexuality, it was about humanity. As the interview spread, something unexpected happened. The tone of the conversation began to change. Some fans expressed guilt for feeding into the gossip. Others admired his grace under pressure. For the first time, the story stopped being about what Sam might be hiding, and started being about what it truly meant to be misunderstood in a world that demands labels. Still, one question remained unanswered, not about who he loved, but about why he had chosen silence for so long. What had that silence cost him? And what truth was he finally ready to share with the world? When Sam finally decided to speak, it wasn't planned. There was no press release, no orchestrated statement, no carefully rehearsed answer. It happened in a quiet studio, during a long-form interview where the conversation drifted from acting and ambition to something far more personal: identity, loneliness, and what it means to be truly seen. The host asked softly, "How do you deal with people constantly defining who you are?" Sam smiled, a tired but genuine smile, and replied, "Maybe I stop trying to fight it. People will believe what they want. But I think the truth is simpler. I've just never felt the need to define myself by labels. I've always believed that love, connection, and respect go far beyond that." That line spread like wildfire. Within hours, clips of his words flooded social media. Some fans called it a confession. Others said it was a message of strength. But to Sam, it wasn't about confirming or denying anything. It was about reclaiming the narrative, taking back the right to exist without being boxed in by assumptions. He had grown tired of being treated like a puzzle people needed to solve. "I'm an actor," he said, "not a mystery to decode." He went on to describe what those years of rumors had really cost him. There were friendships that faded because people didn't want to be photographed with him, fearing how it would look. There were nights when he'd scroll through comment sections and see strangers arguing over his identity as if it were a public property. "It's strange," he said, "how people think they know you because they've seen your face. But fame doesn't make you transparent, it just makes you a target." What the public didn't realize was how much that constant scrutiny shaped his understanding of empathy. Instead of turning bitter, Sam grew more compassionate. He began using his voice to advocate for kindness online, reminding his fans to think before they post, to respect the privacy of those they admire. "Everyone you talk about has a story you can't see," he wrote once, and the words became a quiet mantra repeated across fan pages. In the months following that interview, something shifted in him. He started to speak more openly about emotional health, about the importance of boundaries, about the loneliness that often comes with success. He didn't shy away from vulnerability anymore. "I used to think silence was strength," he admitted. "Now I know honesty is stronger." He also found comfort in creativity. His later projects carried traces of that transformation: characters who struggled with identity, truth, and self-acceptance. It was as if through storytelling, he was continuing a conversation he had once been too afraid to start. "Acting lets me explore the parts of myself I don't always show," he said. "It's not about hiding, it's about understanding." Fans responded with overwhelming support. For every speculative comment that remained, there were hundreds of messages thanking him for his courage. People shared their own experiences of being misunderstood, of feeling pressured to explain themselves to the world. They said his honesty made them feel less alone. Sam read those messages quietly, grateful but humbled. "I never wanted to be a symbol," he told a friend. "I just wanted to be real." The truth behind his sexuality, as it turned out, was never the scandal people thought it would be. The real truth was that he was human, flawed, private, and still learning to love himself in a world that tried to define him. "If people take one thing from all of this," he said, "I hope it's that you don't owe anyone your story. You owe yourself peace." Years of misunderstanding had finally led him to clarity. He didn't need to prove or hide anything. The rumors would come and go, but for the first time, they no longer had power over him. He had replaced silence with self-acceptance, confusion with calm. The interview ended quietly. The host thanked him, and Sam leaned back, exhaling deeply. "You know," he said with a small laugh, "maybe the truth was never what people wanted to hear. Maybe it was just that I'm okay, finally." As the camera faded out, there was no dramatic music, no shocking headline, no revelation to break the internet. Just a man, at peace with himself, finally free from the noise that had followed him for so long. And perhaps that was the most powerful truth of all.